Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Planman. Everything you want to know about insurance, finance, and more, but we're afraid to ask. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein, and I have a belief that everyone should have a plan in life, whether it's a financial plan, a retirement plan, a business plan. Look at Ryan, I bet he's got a fitness plan, a travel plan. Each week, we bring you different topics to help you maximize your planning situation. Today, we're speaking with Ryancicchelli. Ryan's been in the insurance industry for 13 years. He's been consistently writing, check this out, 8 figures in the annuity space. That's over 10 million. From that, Ryan is now invested in over 13 different companies in his area, including he and his wife April have their own animal reserve where they've rescued over 150 animals. I've seen wolves, I've seen zebras, the giraffe. We haven't gotten the giraffe yet. Giraffe was on the
Not
list
yet.
last year. Not yet.
We're building for it right now.
It's amazing. He's accomplished all of this from his core annuity business. And with that, Ryan now coaches hundreds of agents around the country, helping them build their own annuity business. Because of Ryan's expertise in the annuity space, I asked him to come join me today. And we're going to discuss the differences between the accumulation phase versus the income distribution phase and how Ryan positions annuities with his clients in their portfolios. So, Ryan, welcome to Ask the Plan, man. I'm super excited to have you here. But let's start out giving the audience a sense for how you got involved in the insurance and the annuity space at such a young age, because I know how old you are, and doing this for 13 years, it's pretty commendable. So tell us how you got started.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to bring some value to your viewers. So I started again 13 years ago, and I went to Fair State University, was doing business management, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a buddy up at Merrill Lynch, at a Merrill Lynch office, and he said, "Ryan, you've always been a great energetic person. You've always had good energy about you, and so I think a position in finance would be really good. You would do well with clients." And so I said, all right. So I went up there and I did some interning, and we were on the third floor. And every day on the second floor, there was an insurance company. And this insurance company did health, life, and annuities. And this was right at the tail end of 2008. And so our economy was in a very unique place at that time. We were going through a lot of changes. And what they gave me the elevator pitch every day going up to the third floor, and they always pitched me on safety of insurance and what all the benefits insurance can have, especially in volatile times. And so I gave them the benefit of a doubt. I went down and sat down with them, and I started my career in the insurance space. And I started working in health and life insurance. And I really learned from what I would call still to this day industry leaders as far as the training and what they provide where I was, uh, on just the safety and how important it is to be aware of not only what's out there, but what your economy is doing and how you can be helped, right? One of the most common things we heard in 2008 and 2009, and we're even hearing it again today, this is why it's so relevant, is everyone's losing. Well, not everyone's losing. And so with the right products, you can actually do very, very well during these times. And so I've last 10 years, I've dove in directly into annuities. And what I've been able to do is I've been very blessed to be, one of the top annuity writers in the state of Michigan, and now in the top annuity writers in the country. And so what that means is when I say, I consistently write over 8 figures, that's nice. I appreciate that. But what it really means for you guys is I've just seen so many scenarios. I've seen someone coming in very early at the age of 40 thinking about retirement, setting up plans. I've seen people come in at 72 saying, I know I'm behind the ball. I got to think about retirement. And we've just seen just a crazy spectrum of beginning to end and how we can help folks. And so with all the scenarios that I've been able to be in front of, we have a really good idea of how it fits the clients, like how we work and tailor a plan to fit the client's needs the best. And one thing that I pride myself on is we don't ever work for any carriers. And so, if you ever had like Athene or Silac sponsoring one of these, we use their products, but we only use those carriers when it is in the absolute best interest of the client. Other than that, it's really nice to have a open array of companies you can use. And so just unique.
Well, the difference of being independent versus captive, you and I are both independent. And so by being an independent agent, you get access to more carriers. somebody who's working for New York Life or Guardian or Northwest Mutual, they're what you would be considering a captive agent, and so they're going to have their own product and array, and they're solid products. Don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily going to be the best product for that client on that particular day because there's competition out there that's vying for market share, right? And so in good markets, everybody's starting to raise the bar to offering more and more and more to attract and beat the next carrier, beat the competition. No different than Allstate, Farmers, and State Farm try and do on your auto and home. So the annuity space is no different. Now, just so my audience understands, is there's four types of annuities. There's a variable annuity, which you need to be securities licensed, and that's when Ryan and I were at Merrill Lynch, you could have done products like that with a securities license. Ryan and I focused more on fixed and indexed annuities, which, interesting enough, and I don't know if you have a comment on this, but I wanted to put a punch in there to Wall Street, is Wall Street pushes the variable annuities, and they pretty much have outlawed indexed annuities. You both, if you're not seeing us on camera and you're listening in, we're both laughing and smiling to ourselves because the jig is that the annuity companies pay to play, means the Wall Street, the big company firms, we can name them, but we won't, is they kind of charge the variable annuity companies to be included in the sales force's distribution. So if you've got 18,000 financial advisors and we're going to distribute your annuity, you got to pay us to get on our platform. Not just the commissions when we write it, but they kind of charge you a marketing fee, and all of a sudden they're a big sponsor at the President's Club, right? So the indexes somehow never quite found its way and were deemed to be somewhat illegal and not allowed when I was on that side of the fence, which I always found interesting. And of course, it's a straight conflict of interest, is they're just not getting paid by the people you and I are doing business with to get on that platform. That said, let's break down real quick what exactly an indexed annuity is. We can briefly just kind of say what the differences are with the variable side, but the, to me, how I position it, I want to know how you position it. So kind of give us a quick 30-second on what an indexed annuity is, and then you and I can share how we position it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So, index annuities, they allow you to participate with the gains of the market, depending on the strategy, but not the full gains of the market. And so when we're having a good year and where the market's riding up, you'll participate in those gains and you'll continue to go up. And one thing that they do that I love is they lock in interest. Most of them lock in interest every year on your anniversary date. And so let's just take, this month, for example, if you locked in on October 1st and October 2nd, the market just dives way down, 8, 9%, then you would never lose any of the principal you made the year before. And so it allows for a compounding interest every single year. And so, there's a ton of wonderful things about indexed annuities. And one of the most common, and I don't want to get too far into this, but one of the most common indexes that we work with is the S&P 500, right? So the S&P 500 is actually the top 600 companies in the market. And so the reason that we tie to that index is that if Coca-Cola is having a bad day or McDonald's is having a bad day, the whole industry isn't, the whole market isn't having a bad day. But if the S&P 500 is having a bad day, that's a pretty good indicator that the top 600 companies in our market are having bad days. And so it's just a real true indicator of how our economy is doing health wise. And so we'll tether most of our indexes to that. But I'll let you piggyback on that because I get excited talking about growth.
Oh, it's all good. So there are, depending on the platforms, there are other indexes people can peg to. The S&P is the most common. That's the blue chip area that most financial advisors are going to play in. And then really what the conversation's about, Ryan, is risk. And so when you say I'm going to pick Coca-Cola versus McDonald's, well, I would assume your kids probably like a Happy Meal once in a while, and maybe they get a Big Mac or a chicken nugget and they get their Coca-Cola product, right? So people buy what they know. And so an inexperienced investor might go and say, well, I shop at Dick's Sporting Goods, I buy Nike products, I drive a Ford Trailblazer, and I eat it, my kids eat at McDonald's. Well, those are all companies they can invest in. The problem is, without the education and the wherewithal, if you're only buying one or two of these names, is you're taking a lot more risk. And people love to think they understand and tell you they understand risk when everything's good. And when the you know what hits the fan is when people finally get that true taste of what risk is all about. So one of my shows recently was, how do you not get punched in the face with your portfolio? And when the markets are dropping 20 and 30%, you're getting punched in the face and you don't know what to do. And guess what? Inherently, your advisor, Mr. Merrill Lynch, he's not going to tell you to ever sell, because now he's losing the assets. You're not going to know when to get back in. And Wall Street, in a sense, loosely speaking, is its own Ponzi scheme, right? Because if everybody gets out, there's nobody to buy. So how would they ever tell you to get out?
Well,
I
and I'll tell
digress.
you, I'll just chime in for 2 seconds. When because this just came up on another podcast I did, and we worked directly with a client during this. Uh, because most advisors will tell you to hang on, to hold on, to like weather the storm, and that's fine if the person you're telling that to is 40 years old. But if the person you're telling that to is 60, 65, and they're thinking about retirement, or retirement is in the horizon, right now they're readjusting where their retirement even is going to fall. They might have been wanting to retire in 2 years, and because of what they're feeling right now in the economy, they're pushing retirement off. They're changing like the nucleus of their family to adapt to someone telling them to hang on, when there's products out there right now where you can rekindle everything you lost, get back into safety, get good liquidity, and you can get your plan back on track by making a move. And so the old adage, hang on, or you only lose when you sell. It's very in general, because it depends on where you're at in your time in life, and that's really important. Like if you're 40 years old and you're young and you're working and you're maxing out your contributions, yeah, man, hang on. Like you'll be fine. Pick up a secondary plan and get ahead of it. But that's not for everybody.
Well, so let's tie it back in. So the plan man, right? It's all about planning and being proactive. And what you led in with this piece was people are reacting now and they're readjusting their portfolios. The point of being proactive is we've been telling clients for the last 2 years, this musical chairs is going to end soon. You better be taking money off the table. I've never seen a 10-year bull market like this. I've never seen a post-COVID melt up in the markets. You cannot believe this is going to continue forever. So I'm in my 36 years now, Ryan. I've been an asset allocation, uh, you know, purist in the sense, and what that basically means in simple sense is you sell high and you buy low and you rotate around the asset classes. And so, in simplest terms, the lesson in here is there's stocks and there's bonds. Those are the two biggest asset classes most people play with. Well, for the last 10 years, bonds have gone up in value and down in interest rates to the point where we were paying near 0% on CDs. And most bonds, there was a few years ago, Apple issued a 10-year bond, a corporate bond, for 1%. You give Apple all your money, they're going to give you 1% a year for 10 years. And people clamored to get it because you couldn't get 1% on your money, and it was Apple. And then there's the stocks, okay? Whether it's the S&P 500 Ryan's talking about, value stocks, growth stocks, international, doesn't matter what it is, but that comes with a different degree of risk. Well, the last 10 years, stocks have been going crazy. Bonds have held up, and people view bonds to be safe, but they're not safe, they're defensive. So what's happened in the last 6 months, Ryan? We've had a spike, a nasty spike in interest rates, which now has blindsided people that are losing more money on their bond portfolios than they did on their stock portfolios. And the bond markets, just so people understand, are literally 100 times larger than the equity markets. So when the bond market sneezes, everybody out there is going to have the flu, right? And so let me just tie it in, and I'll come back and bring you in on this. What's happened now is if you locked in your money in that Apple bond or a government bond or something for the next 10, 20, 30 years, think about people who locked in their mortgage rates at 2.5%, how happy they are now. Rates are pushing 7, right? So you're never going to give that up. Well, on the flip side, somebody bought that bond at 2.5%, and now new rates are paying 7. So the person who bought the bond at 2.5% is getting shellacked, and they're losing their money. And so what we try to do as position clients is, instead of buying bonds over the years, we were positioning the fixed and indexed annuities. Why? It protects the principal. As interest rates go up, the bond prices are going to go down. And you're going to have to hold it to maturity. And guess what? Most people don't own individual bonds, Ryan. What do they own? They own mutual funds of bonds, which doesn't even have a maturity date. So anyway, so tying that in, so what Ryan and I are basically doing is figuring out where the client's assets belong from a risk standpoint, and then using the annuity, which, let's just define it real quick. It has upside. It's not going to make you 40 and 50% like the equities might on a pure risk standpoint. But what's the floor? It's zero. It's never lose a dime. So some years you might be flat, some years you might make your 8%, some years you might make your 3%. But when the markets drop 30%, Ryan's still at zero loss for the year. His dollar's still a dollar. The next year the market comes up and makes 8%, Ryan's at 108. And the guy who lost 30%, well, he's at 70 cents on a dollar. And now he's making 8% on his 70 cents. He's going to take several years to come back. I took the mic from you. Go ahead.
You're good. There's a lot of points we can hit based on that conversation right there. We could be here a while, but one of the things that I do want to touch on, and the reason that this is so important is I use something called, and I don't want to get too far off track here, but I use something for most of my clients called the rule of 100. Now, Bruce, are you familiar with the rule of 100? So I'll explain it. Yeah, I'll explain it just for you guys now. So it's very simple. You just take your age and divide it by 100, and that's how much money you should have in non-market risk investments. And so if you're 70 years old, just for easy math, you're 70 years old, 70% of your money needs to be safe from non-market volatility. Now, you can choose what safe non-market volatility product you pick, but I can tell you that one of the best ones in the market right now are fixed index annuities without question. And you can blend that up with some MIGAs and some other things, but I won't get too overwhelmed there. But that means that the other 30% you can play with within the market. The rule is that if the market takes a 10% hit, then you're now taking a 10% hit on 30% of your money, not a 10% hit on 100% of your money. And then it should always change. So again, if we look at them in, the opposite version almost is if you're 40 years old, you only need 40% of your money put away where it's safe. And even then you can put it into a couple different things. It might not be a fixed index annuity, it might be a variable annuity at that point. So it's really dependent on your age, your assets, how much you can put in. But one thing that's really, really important is that Bruce said something that I won't disagree with, but I will say that times are changing like crazy. If anyone on here hasn't made a move yet, know that it isn't too late because you can absolutely make a move. These carriers are literally adding new bells and whistles every single day to attract your attention. Like now, more advisors than ever are offering fixed index annuities. More banks than ever are offering fixed index annuities. Like fixed index annuities are becoming very, very attractive, especially with these market conditions. And so one thing that they have changed is the rates have gone up tremendously. I mean, the caps have gone up tremendously. And so I personally had a client, Carrier Equitrust for this example. I did a review 2 months ago, locked in 21% growth for the year. And so 21% growth is absolutely phenomenal in a fixed index annuity where you're not going to have risk. And so you can have great upside years. Now, I encourage you to work with someone that knows what they're doing in allocation and how to help you there, because you don't get that by luck, right? A little bit of luck with what the market did, but you have to have the right allocations.
Timing of it is an element, obviously, but you can't time it all the time. And I don't think you and I are in disagreement. I was saying there's a difference of proactivity versus reactivity. Neither you nor I nor anybody listening there can know steadfast what the next 6 or 12 months are going to look like, that we're not going to lose another 30% in the equity market. So by all means, you need to do a risk assessment and analysis. But let me put the horse before the cart a little bit. When you talk about a 40-year-old with 40%, non at risk, level using the annuity versus, that whole age thing. So the whole purpose of planning, my first line is everybody should have a financial plan. The financial plan says to Ryan and April, you're X years of age, you're saving Z amount of money. What rate of return do you need to make to reach your goals? If the rate of return is 15%, well, what risk comes with taking 15%? And is that realistic as an advisor to tell your client, I'm capable of making you 15% compounded for the next 30 years? Historically, that has never happened. So that would not be a prudent financial recommendation, right? So we might sit down with April and say, look, you guys are making good money. That's your strength, but your risk tolerance is a little bit too high. You really only need to make 7%, and you guys could retire at 50 with everything you want, right? Well, now what does 7% mean? And so now when you back in that 7%, the whole risk spectrum changes dramatically. And now a lot of the things that Ryan and I have to offer fit the profile for a recommendation for that level of risk. It may not fit for the person that needs 2%. It may not fit for the person making 16%. But if you said, I think you said it off camera, is you have a 72-year-old that's looking to play catch up, right? There's only so much magic Ryan and I could work for somebody if they're behind the eight ball as far as time, because time is our greatest ally for making significant returns. Because, and again, Ryan came into the business as the financial crisis was kicking in. Well, if you're a student and understand, from the dot-com burst of 2001 to the end of 2009, 2010, that 10-year window, the S&P 500 had a negative 1% rate of return. Now, it had hiccups along the way, it had ups and it had downs, but if you were just buying Bill Gross's S&P 500, it's not Bill Gross, but whoever the Vanguard guy was, Peter Vogel, you're buying the S&P 500 because Peter Vogel was giving you a 0.015 expense ratio and said buy and hold and never sell. Well, for 10 years, you made a negative 1% on your money. But Ryan, you got to make money in bonds, you got to make money in international, small caps. So our annuities were able to be somewhat positive and a better performance streamlined over that 10-year window. So when the market got kicked in the shins, our clients didn't take that beating. And so that's where we want to testify to the importance of this as an asset class. Not 100% of everybody's money belongs there, and maybe only 5 or 10% might for other people. But what Ryan said earlier was, if 30% of your money's at risk and 30% loses 50%, well, the lion's share of your money was protected, right? And so what kicks me is people like, oh, look how bad it is. My 401k is a 201k. Well, 3 years ago, you were a 201k and it became a 401k again. The markets rallied. Did you forget how much money you made in the last 5 or 10 years? And so, again, it's why time is on our side. So, and I didn't want to take away your point on what you were saying as far as it's risk, it's timing. You probably more than I work with a younger audience. I've never really had 40-year-old clients in my wheelhouse as far as my client base over the years. I was kind of in the mid 50s and up, helping people get to the finish line. So I don't necessarily have the same experience with a 40-year-old. I had 40-year-old clients, clearly, but most of them came to me for my seminars a little bit older. So how do you determine what is best for the client? Take us through your process of evaluation, what paces you put your clients through a little bit to then help them uncover, ascertain where certain assets belong in what we have, which is that indexed playing field.
Well, I think a lot of that, so a lot of it for me comes in just we call it discovery or fact finding, right? For us to do our job on a fiduciary level, for us to be making the best moves with the client, we have to understand what you have going on. We have to understand it from that first, a 10,000-foot view of knowing everything that you have. And then the next step down is we have to understand you as a person. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? It's almost the same questions at 40 as it is at 60, right? But the difference is the numbers have typically changed, right? You're at 60 years old, you're getting ready to move from your accumulation life phase, which you're accumulating wealth, to your preservation life phase, where you're preserving the assets that you've made for yourself. And so it just has to do with really thorough fact finding. What are your goals? What is your intent with your money? Do you plan to leave it to the children? Do how are you sitting on income? Big one is income, right? Some folks, and this is a huge adjustment. I deal with this all the time, 55 to 65 years old. One of our biggest things is that during this 55 to 65, there's normally debt still. They have probably $100,000 to $120,000 income. Now I know that's not everybody, but that's a common one that comes up. A household income, 100,000, 120,000. They have debt, and when they retire, they know their Social Security is going to be like $3,000 a month, and so that's a huge offset. They might have a pension. They might want to draw from their assets, but to get the plan correct, to go from $100,000, try to pay down some of your debt and adjust your lifestyle to where you go from 100 to 50 as a couple, that you can do it peacefully with ease. You can get through a month without dipping into your savings. That takes some planning, that takes some strategy, that takes time. Like that you I can't have Bruce come in and sit in my office on day one and be like, solve for X right now. We can, but you have to work together with us to make this plan happen. And so, as we ask these questions and as we understand the client's goals, one big thing that I don't hear a lot of advisors or insurance agents or index annuity specialists or anybody talk about is I'm really big, and I tell this in my first meeting because I'm at a point in my career now where I don't have to take every client that sits with me. If you're a good fit and I'm a good fit for you, then we'll work together. If you're big, you want to trade and do all this stuff, I'm not the guy for you, and I have no problem telling you that. But one thing that I do, and I do very well with my clients, is accountability. I hold my clients very accountable to the plan that we picked in place. And we really map out where they're at, where they want to go via what their income is, their goals, what they want, all these questions, and then what we track to get there. I sat down with a gentleman the other day, 55 years old, wants to be aggressive but doesn't want any loss. Okay.
They don't
But
understand that conflict of the contradiction
well,
of that statement.
but and we talked about this earlier. Athene has a new product out there. It's a fee-based product, very aggressive for an indexed annuity, very aggressive for an indexed annuity. But what's the caveat? You get no risk and you get better growth, but there's a pretty large fee attached to it. It's 3%, right? And so there's your trade-off. But he saw the growth model over 10 years and said, that's what I want to do. And I said, well, and so the way you do this, Bruce, and I don't want to get too far out, but you do it to get the best accreditation model that you're paying for, typically is biannual. And so what we're looking at now is I say, well, all right, we'll just call him John for this number. I say, all right, John, well, then you have to realize that if we only get credited twice a year or once every 2 years, and let's say the first accreditation is 5%, and then that next year we don't have one. And so before the fourth year, we sit down and you're saying, over 3 years, I've made 5%, and you're mad. We've talked about all of this. Like, we know that this structure is meant specifically for you, that these are our goals in 10 years. We're not going to base it off of what 3 years looks like. We're going to base it off of what 10 years looks like. You're still working. You still have another 401k. So there's so much that goes into it. But at the end of the day, the client has to be on the same page with you. And so we have another thing that we use called LifeTrack, and this is CRM software that we developed, and I own it. But it's simply where I go in and we have a client-facing portal, and after most of my appointments, I'll go in and do a video for the client. So just like this, I'll be like, hey, Bruce, we picked the fixed index annuity 7-year with this, these bells and whistles for these 5 reasons. And so at any given time, if the client ever wants to jump in that portal and be like, what feature did this have that I like? We have a list of our features, and that helps us a lot now with compliance. And so we're recording exactly why the client picked this product, why the benefits are, and we'll throw in there now a downside to this product is that it's 3% a year. But based on the goals of John, that this meets his goals, right? And so just holding clients accountable is a unique one that I do like to use, and my clients have all done very well with accepting that.
So you made mention on the goal setting, obviously the planning and the plan man in here, but I use the acronym Woody Woofy. What do you want for yourself? Right? Woody Woofy. So you're taking that same concept and you're basically breaking down anything planning, whatever the plan is, or the plan to add another 150 animals to your zoo, your rescue. That takes planning. I mean, you can't just all of a sudden drop all these animals in. This one's going to eat that one, and you can have fights. So it takes planning. So when you're planning out your life, your finances, your investments, there's steps along the way. And oh, by the way, it's obsolete the second you do it because the market's going to be different tomorrow. Interest rates are going to change. You're going to be a year older. Your something's going to happen. So this is always, always, always a work in progress. So having an advisor that holds you accountable, puts steps in place for you, does reviews on a regular basis, whether it's semi-annual or annual, it's paying attention. You can't just put this in your back pocket and ignore it. The markets are ever changing. We just had a hurricane come through here. You look today, you would have never known. A week ago, everybody's running to the stores, piling up sandbags, evacuating, right? A week later, it's over. And so the markets go through their own storms, maybe not over a week. It could be a couple of years. And in my day, it's been years and even a decade where you got nothing. So it's taking the education that somebody like Ryan possesses and leveraging that knowledge and listening, right? Two ears, one mouth. Listen, talk less. Listen to Ryan and your advisor out there who's giving you that advice, and then taking the components in a measured fashion and putting them in place in your portfolio. So, but before we run out of time, you mentioned the 40-year-old versus the 16-year-old, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that segue because it's probably the biggest challenge that I found with clients over the years is for them to really see it is they get the accumulation side. They struggle with the distribution side. Like, how am I going to get at that money? How do I get at my 401k? How do I get at this? When do I take my Social Security? What about Medicare? Like all those other moving pieces in there. So tell us how you see the annuity products that help people on that back end when it comes to a distribution, because it does provide a level of streamlining and consistency. So tell us how that works.
Yeah, so I'm gonna full circle this, I promise. But you hit on something that I really wanted to touch on, and it's no matter if you're going from 40, to 60 years old or whatever. One of the biggest things that I see, uh, and that clients don't do, so I please do this, is you'll be in a position, your advisor, your broker, your insurance agents will have you in a position for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and it looks the same. And so the rule is that every 5 years, something typically changes in the nucleus of your family. Something drastic, like something catastrophic just happens within every 5 years of every family. And you can look that up, fact check me on it. But the point is that if you are 50 years old and you look the same financially on paper, and I don't mean money wise, I mean allocation wise, as you did when you were 40, there's an issue there. If you get from 50 to 60, right, and you look the same, there's an issue there. You have to be sitting down with someone that specializes on this to look over what changes are happening, because even if it is just that 10% getting to safety every year, that accumulates tremendously. And so what happens is, and then I'll come back into this here now, is that when you're in your accumulation phase, and I know you guys understand that, but I'll just touch on it real quick. But you're contributing, your employer's typically matching you. Maybe you have a Roth set up for yourself because you have some additional income, and the market's working with you. When you're moving into your preservation stage, you have to realize, like, once you're out of that employer's plan, you no longer get the discount on their fees, because most of these employers have big discounts they get for having all their employees in there. So you're going to have fees attached that you didn't feel before. And then you're no longer contributing, your employer is no longer contributing. And so when there's a downturn within the market, you feel the full gravity of what that downturn is. And they say it takes 3 to 5 times longer to earn your money back in retirement as it did when you were working. So you have to be very aware of these things, because a bad year, once you retire without making adjustments, a bad year in retirement could put you back into the working force. And so that's extremely important to understand. Now, as far as the fixed index annuities and the distribution you can take, there's many different products. And this is what's beautiful, is they just keep coming out with new products with new bells and whistles. I had a client the other day that said, Ryan, the product I was in before had a 5% withdrawal structure on it. The one you just put me in gave me a 14% bonus and a 10% from day one. And I said, that's right, Mary. And she says, well, why didn't you put me in that 7 years ago? And I said, because it didn't exist. It didn't exist 7 years ago. These products have changed and they've come around. And so it's our job to, as they come out and as they get these nice features, that you can access them. If you're looking at just pension style retirement, there's a product for that. I can get you guaranteed income, right? We can grow a benefit base where you, if you want $2,000 a month in retirement with the right planning, you can have an additional $2,000 a month in retirement with your Social Security and maybe some pension coming in. If you're looking at, hey, I don't ever want to touch this money, but if I need access to it, I don't want to be capped at 5%. I want to be able to draw 25%. Depending on how long you have that product, Silac has a great product for that, where it compounds all the way up to 30% that you can withdraw of your money out of that product. So there's so many ways to take distributions now. The best way is just there's you know good planning is done early and often. And so as long as you can get in there and you start today, tomorrow, the next day, you start to plan, you start to put it together. What does my future look like? Once we know what that looks like, you have to know, you have to see it, right? Like those guys that go to the Super Bowl, they see that Super Bowl, man. They see it every game, every day, every day. They see winning the game because you guys got to win at this game called life. And so if you don't know where you're going, it makes it much harder for you and myself to come up with a plan of where you're going. So that's the biggest thing. Know where you're going because then we can start to tailor. Then we can start to. I had a client the other day tell me they wanted $1.5 million by the time they retire. They're 40. They have nothing saved right now. I said, then you better get really disciplined on how you're doing this because it takes discipline and we can build the plan that fits within your means, but are you going to stay true to the plan, right? And so there's a lot to it. But as far as distribution, there index annuities they can be distributed very, very, very many different ways.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
just add one thing in here for context so people understand, because you and I are a generation or two apart. So when I started in the 80s, when people hear annuities, depending on the age of the listener today, annuities have a different notion to an older person than a younger person. And the reason being, when I started, I was 23, not 19 like you. When I started in the industry, we didn't have all these bells and whistles and products. You had an index, you didn't have an indexed, you barely had variable. And so the knock on the annuity and what I've been saying for decades is this is not your father's annuity. And in that generational sense, an annuity was normally annuitized. And annuitization means, Ryan, you give me your $100,000 and I'm going to give you lifetime income in exchange. But Ryan no longer has his $100,000. So if something else came about, well, that money's gone. He turned it into, you used before, a pension, right? And so that's what annuities were. They were pension creation devices. When people retired and they got their AT&T pension, it was a sense of an annuity. That's all it was. What happened over time from the 80s forward is the evolution of all these other products to do exactly the opposite, and that is avoid annuitization. So the clients can have some flexibility on their distribution, and they know that their kids are going to get money at the end of it if they don't exhaust it themselves. But if you annuitized, your kids are not going to get anything once you and April are gone because the money ends with your life, right? In simpler terms, okay? There's obviously, you and I know there's other products out there that
I appreciate you
we'll
bringing
give
that up
something.
though, Bruce, because I commonly forget that it's like that. I sit with clients all the time and I just talk about them in this positive manner, but there's true for a lot. When I first got in the industry, we would say index linked products because there was just that like a stigmatism, and they've just come a long ways.
Yeah, no, it is definitely, because like anything else, it forced itself to make room at the table, right? Because again, we said earlier on this, is Wall Street kind of kiboshed it. Wall Street, where the money's at, right? The Wall Street firms, the Merrill Lynch's of the like, they control and have high net worth clients, and they want them to do lots of things that are going to pay them as much in fees as they can. And then there's you and I on the independent side that don't work for the big wirehouses, and we're scrapping and punching and clawing to find our voice and our space to help clients, because not everybody wants to work with the big firms. Not everybody's going to be qualified. Your 40-year-old with no money is not going to qualify to be taken on as a client at Merrill Lynch. You and I both know that, right? So they need people like us who are willing to give them that start, because I don't know about you, but I wasn't born with $2 million in my bank account to become a Merrill Lynch client. So, you got to start somewhere, right? And so the products have evolved, which is, to your point, is some people might be hearing that word annuity and that stigmatism. Is we're trying to destigmatize where it has its place, how to use it, and why we use it. So let's come back to the distribution side, because, and I guess to put that point in here of the so what is, you can get distribution in retirement without having to annuitize with today's programs. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's very easily, and a lot of it again is just based on your goals. And so, you can have access to 5% a year, 10% a year. It all depends on what the plan looks like. I can give you a quick example. I sat down with a lady yesterday. She's still working, gonna work for 3 more years, sitting comfortably between checking and savings, very financially educated, knows exactly what she's going to have. She uses something called net.com, I think, or network.com. Anyways, it's a tool that you can have to really set up your financial plan. And so she knew the day she retired how much Social Security she'd have, how much pension she'd have, and then how much her bills were every month. And she knew that she would have like $2,600 a month every month after her bills when she retires in 3 years from now, with an inflation calculator on there as well. So she's on it, right? And this is a very financially savvy young lady. But what we did is she had scarcity for too much money in the bank, scarcity for running out of money, and wanted to know that she would be taken care of. And she had a good 401k, an old one from her old working years, and another one. So what we did is we moved her one 401k to Athene, right? And Athene has a nice product where you have 10% a year withdrawal. And we, on that one 401k, let's just say it was a quarter of her estate. And on that one 401k, there is a small fee to have that there, to have the liquidity, but it will have good growth. Her plan is when she retires, she's going to use her savings as a backup to adjust in case she needs to, but she doesn't think she's going to need to, but it's there. And then if she has to activate money, we're going to do it out of the Athene product first that will give you 10% a year. Then we put a bulk of her money, let's say, 2/4 or 2/3 of her money, or excuse me, 2/4 of her money, half of it, into a index product with SILAC that will every year it will compound how much you can withdraw out. And so let's say that 2 or 3 years down the road, she says, Ryan, I don't want to take the 10%, but I actually need a larger amount of money to offset a new roof or something else. She could jump over the Athene product, go to the SILAC product, take out up to 30% of that product, put it in her checking and savings, and then the next year if she needed money, we still have access to Athene, right? Keep in mind that these products have terminal illness riders, which is if something happens to you, it's completely liquid. They have nursing home and assisted living riders. If you need to go into a home, your money's liquid to you. And so the flexibility of drawing money out of these products is more flexible than ever.
You're not handcuffed like you used to be.
Right. And I have said this before. I tell all my clients this is I've been doing this for 13 years and I've never had one client take a surrender fee ever. Now, I have seen people that said that I didn't directly work with that I need an extra $5,000 and I've already taken my 10% out. Well, guys, here's a very easy thing. Someone told me the other day, I'm going to get dinged a 7% surrender charge on all of my money. No, you're not. If you take out another $5,000, or let's just say 5%, right? If you take 5% out more of the 10% you withdrew, you only pay 7% on 5%, if that's the charge. So like the fee could end up coming out to like literally $350. And the fee could end up coming out to like $350 for another $5,000, but you're scared because they said there's a fee attached to it. So nothing, they're very liquid these days.
I had a question and I lost it, which happens every show.
I know. I'm sorry, because when you start to get into like the way you can withdraw, it does get a little tricky.
So I remember what it was now. So it was, as what you were referring to in my brain was laddering. You're offering different programs in a laddering sense, and then what it drew me to, which popped in my head, was the time. I call it time use of money. Is we show clients when their different buckets of money are going to be called upon. We're going to use this money from 62 to 67. We're going to use this money from 67 to 75. We're going to use this money from 75 to 85. And then this money is for 85 and beyond. And what's the point? What's the point of all doing all of that? Well, each one has its own time band. Time elongates the risk opportunity because you have more time. The classic mistake everybody says is I'm 62, I'm 65, I'm retiring, and I dump everything in one bucket. Well, you can't, because if you live 30 years, inflation just spiked to 9-10%. Gas is going through the roof. My utility bills are up 40%. Your car purchases are, nobody's giving cars without a markup. So you can't just dump everything in cash and expect to live 30 years and survive, unless you've got, Johnny Gotrocks with billions, lots of commas in your name. But
Cash is rough right now.
so you need to have your time use of money, and we would use CD ladders or annuity ladders on the you call it what you call it for the MIGAs it's a CD that's basically an annuity, and they're paying way more. Like we have a 5-year CD equivalent annuity paying like 4.5%. The banks haven't caught up to that yet.
Is the highest out there I've seen
Right,
so far.
right. Okay, so basically with zero risk, 5%, I'm sorry, 5 years, you can make over 4.75%, 4.75% on your money, like a bank with similar, it's not FDIC, but it's close. No insurance company's ever defaulted. Nobody's ever lost their money with annuities. They back each other up. There's a whole separate SPIA related, like FDIC to the world of annuities and insurance in general.
Depending on how educated you are on that, and I won't get into details, but in my opinion, my professional opinion, annuities are a lot safer.
A lot safer, right?
A lot safer.
Well, but people don't understand how big the insurance world is. And when we talked earlier about the fixed income market being 100 times larger than the equity market, well, a lot of that is strictly coming from the world of insurance, because all those deposits, all people have to understand how the books and records work. And when somebody sells a life insurance policy to Ryan for $1 million, how much in reserves they have to put away to back that up. And so there's tons and tons of money that floats and gets put to work. And all they're doing at the end of the day is trying to make money on the spreads, which is why there's some surrender charges and penalties on products, because they're putting the money into work, whether it's real estate or high yield bonds or some equity play. If you committed to 10 years and want your money out faster than that, well, understand that they put that money to work. And now they're basically saying, look, we're going to take a hit. You got to take the hit with us. We can't absorb it. You understood the terms of the relationship. And, but that's where you and I ladder it. So maybe we don't put everything in a 10-year. You do some in a 3, a 5, a 7, a 10, whatever.
Well, and then I think it goes back to what we've talked about before. Both of these concepts is the, the earlier planning you do. And good planning is done early and often. So plan. And 2, it's accountability. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't like it, but my clients, I can tell you that my clients have done very, very well with, once we build a plan, it's a two-way street, right? And so, I think that's a really big point where we hit on is that if we do put a plan together, life can throw you a curveball, but I'll have a plan for that curveball, right? If you go out and you decide at 62 in a midlife crisis that you're buying a Ferrari, you got to take some accountability there, right? You're going to have some fees to pay. So, there's just a couple things there.
100%. All right, well, we're going to bring everything to a close. I'd like to thank my guest, Ryan, for being with us today. Ryan, how can people reach you if they want to get a hold of you directly? Obviously, they can come to us at the Planman, but we're going to put your information in the show notes. What's the best way? Phone number, email? How would you like people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so real simple. My email is just my personal email is just first name, last name at Gmail. And then phone number is 231-878-7074. That's my direct line as well. I'll answer all these calls. I get clients calling me all the time. They're like, "You still answer your phone?" I said, yeah. I like being face to face, shaking hands. I go into homes now and I have a pad of paper and a pen, and they're like, "You don't got a tablet or something?" No, and I like my paper. I'm old school, so I like picking up the phone and talking to people. And yeah, you can find me on social media just at Ryancicchelli. I'm all over the place.
And you're part of a Facebook group called the Annuity Syndicate.
The Annuity Syndicate. Yep, so we have that group.
We're gonna post this in there when it's released, and my social media as well as Ryan. So, folks, Ryan and I need your help. We'd like you to share, subscribe, like today's interview conversation. Go to your social media platforms. Ask the Planman at YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on 38 different podcast channels. I'm sure there's one out there you can find. You can hit me up at asktheplanman.com, Bruce at asktheplanman.com for my email. Brian, we got an 800 number, 844-PLANMAN. We got Planman covered in all directions. I'd like to thank Ryan today for joining us. Remember, folks, if you need some advice, always get it right. Come ask the Planman. Ryan, thanks so much for being here, and let us know when that giraffe arrives.
Yeah, I will, buddy. I will. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's great to have you.
some advice. Never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the plan man. Finance, insurance, and more.